The idea of money being like a stranger cooperation technology, that it actually allows us to scale past the Dunbar number in terms of our social groups and then increase population density, as you're saying, obviously with that, the division of labor, productivity, et cetera. Does that sound about right? Like it allows those social groups to just grow larger than they otherwise would be. So obviously they would outcompete smaller social groups.
Yes. So that's another element here that in my research, this hypothesis sort of helps to answer. I've always found it interesting that Dunbar, so Robin Dunbar in 1992 puts out this study on neocortex volume and the number of individuals in primate social groups. And so, this is early in this type of science. So he, studies the brain volume of various primates and then plots that brain volume against the social group size that these species tend to be found in. And he draws a linear regression. And based on our brain volume, that line intersects with 150 individuals for a social group size. So that study predicts that humans would naturally gravitate to 150 individuals, or at least be bounded by 150 individuals based on what our neocortex is large enough to keep track of. And that is pretty accurate. That's kind of a natural tribal existence size social group. And, we see that in modern life. There's a lot of social institutions are kind of structured around that, like no more than 150 individuals, whether that's like a social club or like a fraternity or sorority or military regiment. That's a pretty common bound to have. And it feels right too, like that, you can keep up with 150 people and not really beyond that. So Dunbar puts that out, and it's a seminal piece of work and now known as Dunbar's number. The following year, he puts out another study that adds like an efficiency multiplier to try to explain away one of the problems with Dunbar's number. And that's based on the amount of time that primates are spending in one-on-one socializing. If you have a social group of 150, the math works out to you'd expect to spend 42% of the day socializing. And we don't do that. So how are we able to maintain stable social relationships without spending that much time socializing? And his answer is language, and specifically social gossip. So it's a lot more efficient to, maintain your bonds by chatting, and gossiping. It's a great explanation. I think it's very right. But what it doesn't address is the reality that we live in circumstances where we have larger than 150 person surroundings, right? We live in cities, towns. How is it that we are able to do that beyond Dunbar's number? And there hasn't been like a tidy explanation for that. And in the piece here, I bring that in because I think that the concept of money helps explain it's an additional efficiency multiplier that unbounds us from Dunbar's number. And specifically, the problem, I think, with Dunbar's number, I think what he may have actually captured there is that, and Szabo talks about this a little bit, but he doesn't directly tie it to Dunbar. In a pre-money existence, you're living in a tribe and you're incurring debts, doing favors with individuals in the tribe. And you have a mental ledger with every pair of counterparties has a mental ledger of who's given what to who owes the other. And the only way to track that is for everyone else in the social group to be vaguely aware of that. so that the social group can enforce those debts.
Right.
Because without that, you have no, you could back out of
you can defraud the counterparty.
Yeah.
This is kind of like the Rhinestone thing, right?
Yeah.
The public accountability side of it. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that's part of why the Rhinestone thing worked.
Yes.
So the problem with that is that when you get to 150 individuals, based on combinatorial math, that's 11,000 counterparty pairs. And so the social group has to then be vaguely aware of 11,000 mental ledgers. And that's I think where it becomes impossible for us to keep up with. So, it's not that hard to imagine having a relationship with more than 150 people, but it's kind of impossible to imagine like keeping track of 11,000 other counterparties outside of your own reality. And therefore, once you get beyond 150, the ability of the social group to enforce debts starts to break down. So you can't really live in an existence beyond 150 people if you're pre-money.
Yeah.
But then if you have the concept of money, that ceiling is removed because now you can settle your debts real time based on a transfer of a suitable form of money. And that makes it possible to have like an infinite number of counterparties that you interact with. So it removes Dunbar's number, but then it has this additional benefit that I think is possibly more powerful, which is in a tribal existence, the default for your relationship with other tribes is antagonism. Right. So you're going to live in your tribe in your little valley, and the tribe in the next valley over is going to be your competition, right? Like you would end up with blood feuds. Yeah. Because, they killed your uncle. Right.
Turf wars.
Yeah. You can have some turf wars and you have no means of settling those feuds, right? Like all you have is violence. All you have is competition.
Yeah.
But then if you have the concept of money, it creates this constructive medium for positive intertribal relationships.
The division of labor.
Yeah, and you can start to have, you can have truces. You can peacemake. You can pay tribute. You can engage in rudimentary trade, right? Like much more easily than you can with barter. And that makes it so that you can have a relationship with, your neighboring tribes that's constructive. Yeah. You can start to gravitate towards like mutual security alliances where, you watch our back, we'll watch yours, we're stronger together and trade as a benefit. And then you start to gravitate towards tribes living in close proximity because if the neighboring tribe is your enemy, you want a big buffer and you're going to try to stay away from them. You're going to try to keep boundaries and you're not going to interact with them. But if the tribe next door is a positive force for you and you want them kind of closer, you start to live in the same valley. And that's how you start to support 10 times the population density versus the archaic humans that didn't have that relationship with each other.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to find more just like it, and here to find our most recent episode. Also, make sure to like this video to help shine light on the corruption of money, and be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay connected.